All right, Tom Herman, the honeymoon's over. Texas fans want a Big 12 championship, and it's been forever since they've had one. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Big 12 and beyond, the entire Power 5, plus the major independents as we break down not just our predictions, as most people do, but we give you the personnel breakdowns, tell you what units to look out for, where the concerns are, and where the up-and-coming players stand on each team. This Texas team went 6-6 in the regular season in Tom Herman's debut, 5-4 in the Big 12, and of course capped it off with a big Texas Bowl win over Drew Lock and Mizzou, shutting them down to just 16 points, 33-16. Tom Herman, though, in year one, a bit disappointed in the efforts according to most Texas fans who wanted to see a huge splash, but there was enough improvement there, in my estimation, that they're in great shape. And considering the recruiting class that he brought in 2018 near the top of college football, things look good. All right, this offense has to be fixed. It starts with the offensive line. It also includes the quarterback in particular. The running game was abysmal. All right, this was the 10th most efficient offense in the Big 12, or the third least efficient offense, and you could probably guess the other two that were worse than Texas, Baylor and Kansas. There wasn't a Texas offensive lineman who started all 13 games. There was one offensive lineman, just one, who started at least 9 games. And that needs to be your most consistent and cohesive unit on the football team. The offensive line, they have to work together. You need to keep those guys healthy and in play the entire season. Sam Ehlinger appears to be the starting quarterback. Tom Herman has yet to name a starter. He completed 58% of his passes last year with 7 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns and 7 INTs, almost 400 yards rushing. Shane Buechele still in the mix, of course, 64% passer, 7 touchdowns and 4 picks. So basically your difference here is Shane Buechele is much more of a polished passer, can throw it into tight windows, more so than Ehlinger. Ehlinger is the guy that's the spirited leader, the guy that maybe gains a little bit more respect from the teammates for running down the field and taking on a safety or a linebacker and popping pads with anybody downfield. It looks like Ehlinger is going to win the job. That's been the projection by most, but at least Texas has an experienced backup. But whoever wins the job has to be more efficient, especially if it's Ehlinger in the passing game. Up his completion percentage by 4 or 5 percentage points, and maybe we've got something going here. They're not going to throw it all over the place. They don't want to throw it all over the place. They don't need to be Oklahoma or Texas Tech, but they need to be more explosive, and they've got the players on the outside to do such. Colin Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey are really talented wide receivers, but they didn't produce many scores. 3 touchdowns between them. Johnson caught 54, Humphrey 37. Now, between these two guys, they need to score 10 to 15 touchdowns. And they need to do that here in 2018 for Texas to contend for a Big 12 championship. In the running game, there was really no running game. It was deplorable. Kyle Porter ran for 3.1 yards per carry. And if you check out college running statistics, a decent running back in college needs to gain at least, at the very minimum, 5 yards per carry. 3.1 per carry for Kyle Porter. And it wasn't much better from Tennille Carter at 252 yards and 3 touchdowns, and also Daniel Young at 373 and 3 touchdowns. The offensive line was porous, as we mentioned off the top. Not necessarily that they haven't recruited and signed talent, but they haven't worked together, and they have suffered more injuries up front than would be the norm. So Deontay Foreman, Chris Warren, those kind of running numbers that they've gotten out of these Texas teams that were worse overall in 2014, 15, and 16, but could at least pound you up front. They need to return to that type of running game to support whichever quarterback wins the job, especially if it's Ehlinger. All right, let's get to the defense. It was really good in 2017. I would rank it right there with TCU as the conference best. 15 points per ball game given up, and that's despite the offense going 3 and out and giving up the ball in bad field position for the defense. They held Baker Mayfield under 30 points. They held Mason Rudolph to 10 points in regulation. Drew Lock only scored 16 in the aforementioned bowl game, and Texas Tech 7 points. And the Red Raiders usually score on just about anyone. Trouble is, their 4 best players are gone. Malik Jefferson's gone, Poona Ford, Deshaun Elliott off to the NFL. They still have playmakers in place, but not to that extent. We'll see if those guys raise their game and also the 2018 recruiting class in particular takes hold. Of course, you can't expect those guys to be impact players out of the gate, but we know freshmen play and start and make an impact in spots in college football these days especially. And considering the elite recruiting haul in the defensive backfield, I would expect 2 or 3 of those guys to play significant minutes and to make an impact. You've got Charles Menahue at defensive end. He had 7 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. He's back. Brecklin Hager is a playmaker in the making. Didn't have a real forceful stat sheet with 9 tackles for loss and 4 sacks, but he vows to have a big season in 2018. Gary Johnson, the most steady linebacker with 57 tackles and 6 tackles for loss. Chris Boyd at corner is the best player that they've got, lining up against the wideouts with 2 picks, and Brandon Jones with 4 interceptions at safety. Now let's look at the schedule. Maryland at FedEx Field to open the season. That, of course, a revenge game for Tom Herman and company, as his debut was spoiled in Austin by 51 points by the Terps. Maryland is reeling, obviously, off field with all the incidents occurring with the death in the spring and all the things in the news that have come out since. Texas looking for revenge there. They're looking for revenge later in the month, back at home after taking USC to double overtime as a double-digit underdog at the Coliseum last year. Texas gets those 2 games, and I believe that they win both of those games. Of course, the USC game, basically a toss-up. Okay, in conference play, they basically have 2 really difficult stretches. Starting September 15th, after the USC game, they've got TCU, Kansas State, and Oklahoma. Later in the season, it's Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Iowa State for the Texas Longhorns. We've got an improved record here, maybe not up to Texas standards or their expectations for this season. Better things to come most likely down the road, but for right now, 9-3 with the 2 big wins over Maryland and USC, and then 6-3 in conference play. Will that be enough to get them to the Big 12 championship game? You don't have to be the best in the conference. You can be second best and still make it to the conference championship game. Leave your email address to me at my email at MarkRogersTV@gmail, and I'll get you on the newsletter for week 1 of the college football season. And also, of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And those comments should include your predictions on Texas football here in 2018. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.